Here today, Alan Whitehouse from True Sky. Alan is a chief software architect with True Sky, and True Sky is actually one of our corporate performance management partners. So at TGO, we're always looking for ways to educate our clients and prospects with new solutions to help them enhance their dynamics solutions. For the month of March, we have a 3-part webinar series on predictable revenue forecasting. Today's webinar looks at how you can streamline your budgeting and forecasting with True Sky Corporate Performance Management. As a side note, we do have 2 other webinars coming up this month. Analysis Cubes in Dynamics GP, where we will show you how the GP sales cubes can be used to analyze both past and future revenue for predictive revenue reporting. We will also give you a preview of Microsoft Dynamics 365, formerly Microsoft Dynamics CRM, for sales, and demonstrate how this solution can help with accurate revenue forecasting so you can predict sales, allowing you to influence future decisions. So before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping items. First of all your phones are on mute, so we can reduce any background noise. But if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them into the GoToWebinar interface, and we will be sure to answer them at the end. There will also be a survey that pops up at the end of the presentation. Please take the time to fill it in, as that helps us improve any of our future webinars. We will also be having a couple special offers at the end, so please be sure to stay around for that. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with TGO, we are a proven financial system specialist focused on the office of the CFO. We guarantee the success of all of our projects at a fixed fee. And now I'd like to bring out Alan, who is going to talk a little bit about True Sky.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Let me go ahead and show my screen here. All right, so I'm going to go through a few slides here, and then I'm going to launch into True Sky. Now, we are going to focus on revenue forecasting today, and just so people understand what I'm talking about with revenue forecasting, this is really, the dollars and the quantities that go into your revenue numbers if you were to say look at a P&L. We're not getting into something like pipeline analysis. And again, sometimes people can, see a lot of overlap in those. So this is not a presentation that is dealing with things like, okay, where are they at in the sales cycle and how does your sales funnel look, just so everyone's kind of on the same page here. Well, let's start talking a little bit about, what we're going to cover today and what I hope to show you by the end. Well, first we're going to talk a lot about some of the pains that you're probably feeling today using the tool. So we had the poll open at the start about what tool that you were using, and a majority of you seem to be using Excel for your budgeting and forecasting process. So hopefully a lot of this will resonate as I go through. However, even if you're not using Excel, I think what I'm going to show you here will hopefully still be of value to you. I'm going to talk about, again, start with your pains, and then we're going to talk about the implication of those pains and what does that mean as you're going forward on the budgeting cycle. Talk a little bit about True Sky and what our solution is, and we're going to talk about some of the benefits that you'll see by deploying True Sky within your organization. Well, first let's talk about some of that pain that you're experiencing today going through the budgeting and forecasting process. Again, whether it's for revenue or whether it's for expenses or compensation or what have you. First and foremost thing I see when working with a lot of different organizations is that at the end of the day, the numbers don't add up. This is probably the most common complaint if you've got multiple different systems that you're working with to do your forecast, especially if you're doing it in Excel, because odds are you are juggling multiple different workbooks or worksheets. And when you try to tie everything back, at the end of the day, the numbers just don't tie out. And you spend a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, who changed a row, who changed a column, how did this data get changed over here, but it didn't get changed over in this system? and so forth. So you waste a lot of time trying to track down and tie your numbers up. Because the process is always so labor intensive, because you're pulling data out of, say, your ERP system or your order entry system, if let's say you're doing revenue forecasting by customer or by product or salesperson, whatever the case may be, it takes a lot of time to get that data out, to get it massaged, to get it back into a format that you can use for the forecast. So you're always working with numbers that are outdated. And then because you don't have that ability to try to get that insight into what people are thinking, because you're just putting numbers in and dollars as an example, you end up making decisions based on less than perfect information. Well, what are the implications of that to your business? Well, first and foremost, you've got a huge amount of lost productivity. There's a big amount of hurry up and wait. People are waiting on others to get their portion done. People are waiting to get their Excel workbooks through email so they can put some numbers in. They're waiting on getting that data dump out of the ERP or the order entry system so they get the actuals that they can compare against. So again, there's a lot of lost productivity. Because you don't have auditability in many of these situations, there's a lot of finger pointing. Many of you have probably heard that concept of, these are my numbers, I didn't put those numbers in, you can't hold me accountable to those numbers. A lot of that goes on. So over the course of time, people lose confidence in the process, they lose confidence in the people that are putting the numbers in, because again, all of these issues that arise. I think everyone agrees that the budgeting and forecasting process, regardless of what type of budgeting and forecasting you're doing, whether it be revenue, expenses, capital expenditures, compensation, project, whatever, it takes too long to get through the whole process. And if you actually were to, add up how much time it takes all of your people and the effort that goes into it, it's costing you a great deal of money. So what is the solution? Well, the solution, in our opinion, is True Sky. And if I try to boil down True Sky into a nutshell and the tightest possible way to explain it, is that True Sky simplifies the budgeting and forecasting process for companies that are using Excel. Now, True Sky falls under the banner of what is called corporate performance management software. And what does that do? Well, it is software that allows you the following. We provide an ability for you to quickly and securely capture budgeting and forecast information from the right people with the right knowledge of your operations. In fact, we actually facilitate the concept of getting more people involved in the process and more people that are closer to the action and who know their piece of the puzzle the best, but automatically having all of that great information roll up in real time. So if we are talking something about revenue, maybe you can get higher quality numbers by having all of your individual salespeople contribute to the revenue forecast budget, or all of your consultants, or depending on what your business model is, because they know best what their customers might be purchasing or what the environment is out there, the salesperson that has the actual feet on the street, so to speak. We also provide you tools that allow you to compare your forecast, your budget, your plan, whatever term you want to use, to your actuals. So pulling actuals out of your accounting system. So I know a lot of you on this webinar are probably using Dynamics GP. So again, pulling actuals out of Dynamics GP, whether that be at a general ledger level or whether it be at a subledger. So again, customer sales or product sales or whatever the case may be out of the order entry subledger. And compare that to your plan so you know how well you're doing and are you meeting plans. And then if you notice for some reason that you're not meeting plans, we provide tools that allow you to do deep dive analysis to kind of see what is going on in that situation. Was this a timing issue? We thought the sale was going to happen in June, but it happened in July. Or we lost that customer, or whatever the case may be, giving you those tools to try to figure out why you have discrepancies. And then ultimately being able to package that information up and report it back to your stakeholders who can use that information to continue to plan all over again, taking into account the new information. You get this kind of continual cycle of improvement. So speaking of improvements, what are some of the improvements that you'll get by deploying True Sky in your organization? Well, the number one improvement that we see for most organizations is a dramatic decrease in the amount of time it takes to get through the budgeting and forecasting process. So I'm going to start with an example here that is that once a year really big budget that you're doing. And again, this applies to using a lot of different applications, but especially if you're using Excel to manage the process. And for most organizations, that starts something like 120 days out. And if you look at the chevrons at the top here now, you'll see this is how you tend to spend a lot of your time. You have people that are creating all your different input sheets. And again, using Excel as a common tool as part or all of the process, you're creating dozens or hundreds of different input sheets. And why is that? Well, you know, Excel by design is not multi-user. And it doesn't have a built-in security model. So you're creating one workbook or worksheet for each individual user, for each department, for each customer, for each location, for each salesperson, whatever the case may be. And that's a lot of things to create, and you're creating those each and every time you go into a budget cycle. And then you go into the input phase where you're getting people to put the numbers into the system. And why does this take so long? Well, in many situations, it's because the people that are doing the input don't have all the information, and they're actually trying to get it from the people that know. So if we're talking revenue forecasting, maybe you're only, because of all the complexity, you're only having your sales managers input numbers. But guess what? They've got to get input from all their salespeople. So they're wrangling all the salespeople to try to get those numbers. So again, it takes a lot of time. Often the tools that they have at hand and the layouts are also not conducive to getting them in and out of the forecasting process quickly. And then you've got that really big merge problem that comes into play. And that is when, you know, you go through all of this and you see that, you know, someone has added a row, they've deleted a column, you try to do all of the those roll-ups of all your different workbooks, and everything breaks. And that's because people have deleted rows, they've deleted columns, they've put in text where you expected numbers, and you get all those hashtag REF or hashtag value errors all over the place, and you try to track all those down. And by the time you kind of got your forecast and your budget finalized to go to present to the ownership, the board of directors, your financial institution, your regulatory body, whatever the case may be, you've rushed. And you haven't had time to think through all the different answers to all the different what-if type questions that you're going to get hit with. Well, with True Sky, we like to think that you'll get something like what you see below, where you've got input sheets that dynamically adjust to each individual user for each budget cycle, for each type of budgeting process that you're going through without having to constantly recreate the wheel each and every time. That you have layout and input formats that are conducive to getting people in and out of the budgeting process as quick as possible. And then that painful merge goes away completely, and because everything we do is in real time. But then you gain that little section down there that's in the yellow that's called Analyze and Strategize. And what that does is that's the time that you've gained by deploying something like True Sky that you can use to work through all those different what-if questions. So as an example, if you're budgeting revenue and we're going to hit these top-line numbers, what does that mean for what we're going to need for warehouse space? And if we need to acquire more warehouse space, what's that going to do to our bottom line? Or are we going to need to hire more people to work in manufacturing based on our revenue forecasts? Or are we going to have to let some people go if we lose this customer, right? So those are all the kind of the questions that you can have. So when you go to present your numbers, you have all the answers there and you can finalize that budget much quicker. So talk a little bit about how things work in the True Sky world. And I'm going to talk about what we call data models. And a couple more slides and then we'll launch into showing you some of the software. Within True Sky, you can build unlimited different data models. And I'm showing you one kind of setup here. And again, there's 1,000 different ways this can be deployed. But what you can see there is that we've got a couple different data models that are specific to the task at hand. So you have a financial model, which is where you might do things like your SG&A budgeting that is very much GL level based. And then you see down below we have a revenue model that is specific to capturing your revenue numbers. Now that may be at a GL level, or it could be at the thing of where we're going to do budgeting by customer, or by product, or by product group, or by salesperson, or by customer, by product, by salesperson, whatever the case may be. These different data models can take feeds from different systems. So as an example, your financial model may take data from your GL out of your ERP system, out of Dynamics GP. But the revenue model may be fed data from the subledger, the order entry, or the receivable subledger that you have. Again, populating things like customers and inventory levels and product sales. But you could also combine that revenue number with data that is coming out of your CRM system. So again, you could be combining it with future forecasts that are coming out of, say, Salesforce or Microsoft CRM. And again, all of these different data models can talk. So I'm going to walk you through really the magic of what we do as an application, and kind of how we roll things out to individual users and some of the value that we bring. So within your organization, when you deploy TrueSky, someone's going to get flagged as a designer, and that is a role, and that is the person that builds templates that are used for input sheets as well as reports. Now what they're going to do is they're going to take Excel, and again, the great magic of what TrueSky brings to the table is that we allow you to continue to use Excel as your end user interface, and the reason we like that is because it's a very powerful interface that has a great deal of flexibility, and your people are already used to working with it. So they're going to take Excel and they're going to create what we call a template, which is Excel integrated with the TrueSky environment. Now you can create different templates for, revenue forecasting, for compensation planning, for, financial budgeting, whatever the case may be. Now everything we do is stored in a back-end centralized database, so you're not ever emailing workbooks back and forth and wondering who has copies of what. Once you have all of your different templates created, someone who is an administrator, could be the same person as the designer, so it could be somebody completely different, it's going to take a copy of those templates, and they're going to combine it with security settings, and they're going to combine it with approval trees, which is your approval flow, and they're going to generate what we call either an assignment or report. Assignments are allowed for entry, reports are read-only, can look but can't change. Now the real magic happens is that when each user goes to access the system, they get their own copy of that assignment or report in Excel that they're allowed to edit within certain parameters that you prescribed. We've in effect turned Excel from a single user tool to a multi-user tool, but also provided things like back-end controls over the approval process, as well as security and so forth. And again, every time they save something, it's stored to our back-end database. Now a couple of the things that TrueSky supports, and something like we really try to encourage our customers to do, especially when you're doing something like revenue forecasting, is getting into what I call driver-based budgeting, driver-based forecasting. I'm going to give you a couple of examples here of why this is important to get to, rather than just budgeting dollars. Okay, so first example one, we're going to say you're a distributor, manufacturer, something along those lines, right? And you've predicted that you've got $5 million in sales. And typically you sell your product at a $10,000 per unit product price. Well, what that means is that you've got 500 units that you're going to have to build, warehouse, and ship over the course of a year. Okay? Now, on the flip side, I'll give you an example two. Still predicting that same $5 million in sales, but at this time, your people are predicting a sales price of $2,500 per unit. Well, what that means is that you've now got 20,000 units that you need to build, warehouse, and ship, which is 4 times the volume. So that has a dramatic impact on potentially your staffing volumes, your warehouse space that you require, potentially having to add another production run, increase your manufacturing facilities, whatever the case may be. So if you're just budgeting the top line number, the revenue dollars, you don't have any of this great detail behind the scenes to make up your business decisions. And we can help facilitate that. I'll give you another example for those of you that might be more in a professional services type role. So let's say again, you're predicting $5 million in billings over the course of a year. And your average billable rate is $200 per hour. and you figure each consultant can easily do $1,500 hours of billable time per year. Well, to hit your goal of 5 million billings, you're going to need 17 consultants. All right. Well, same thing. You want to hit that $5 million in billings, but maybe your billable rate's only going to be 150 in reality this year. And your people can't actually do 1,500 hours. It's going to be only 1,000 hours per consultant. So to hit that $5 million, you're going to need 33 consultants instead of 17. You know, that's 2 times the staff, which also affects your bottom lines because that's also 2 times the compensation that's going to come out, and maybe 2 times the amount you're going to have to spend on computers and training and everything else. So again, we can help facilitate driver-based forecasting. I think that's critical when you're talking about revenue. Okay, so with that, I'm going to launch into TrueSky. Okay, so let me get out of PowerPoint here. All right. Right now on screen, everyone should be seeing Excel. And again, TrueSky from an end user point of view integrates with Excel, and that's what people get to use. So you're seeing all of the traditional tabs. You got home, insert, page, layout, so on and so forth. And here's the one with TrueSky. And again, this is how you interact it. You've got a lot of people that are in various jurisdictions, so I'd like to point out that TrueSky supports multiple languages and multiple regional formattings. So I've got language packs here installed for English, French, and Spanish. And not only do we change the user interface, like I'm showing you here on the screen, but also we change the regional formatting for how you're interacting with your data. So as an example, if you're used to the North American, I guess more or less standard for looking at numbers, you're going to have a comma for the thousand separator and a period for the decimal separator. If you are using the French regional format, like they would in Quebec as an example, you will have a space for the thousand separator and a comma for the decimal. So we allow individual users to work the way they want to work, yet it's all stored in the same kind of format. Now, a bulk of what the individuals are going to work with is on this little tab that's here is called the Hub. And the Hub, as the name implies, is the central area where users go to interact with the system. And I'm seeing 3 different tabs here. I'm seeing assignments, which are entry tabs. Those are how you get data into the system. I'm seeing reports, which are read-only but can't change anything. And I'm also an administrator and I'm a designer, so I can see templates, which are those raw Excel documents that are used to create assignments or reports. Now over here under assignments, you can see I have a couple things. I've got some different organization folders for things like my administrative assignments, but here to the annual budget cycle, you see I've got 4 different tasks I have to work on: admin expenses, travel expenses, sales revenue, and project revenue. And I've got access to an ad hoc report and a financial statement. Okay. Now, what's key on this is that what users see when they log into the system for assignments and reports is dynamic, and it automatically adjusts for the individual user that's logged into the system. And these lists will grow and shrink based on their security settings and what has been published by an administrator. So one user comes in here and they see 4 assignments and 2 reports. Another user comes in and only sees 1 assignment and maybe no reports. So again, this is how you start to spoon feed information to your users to bring them up to speed on a new solution without having to do a whole lot of training and without having to worry and overwhelm them and ultimately get pushback from those users. Now I'm going to use for a couple examples here just my admin expenses, and then we'll get into some revenue specific stuff. But you see that we can support things like start and end dates. So you can control when people can start entering numbers, and then you can automatically lock them out of making edits, so you don't have to worry about after you thought the budget was done that it is edits are happening that you were unaware of. We also have a complete workflow approval engine behind the scenes that you can configure for your organizational needs. So I might need to do data input, and again, you can tailor this. So on the simple side of things, we can support the concept that 4 users report to 2 users report to 1 user, that kind of perfect pyramid. But on the more complex side, we can do things like, you know what, I have to do data input for, say, Department A or Department B, or for sales region, sales territory 1 and sales territory 2. And territory 1 goes to 1 user for approval, but territory 2 might go to a completely different user for approval, and yet they come back to the a third person at level 3 of the approval flow. So we can handle things like split approvals or dotted line approvals, whatever term that you want to use. So I'm going to open up at first the admin expenses here, and I'm going to show you some global features of TrueSky, then I'll get into some revenue specific stuff. But these global features that I'm showing you will also apply in the revenue areas as well. Well, the first thing that I show is when I launch in, what it did is it went in and automatically opened up a input sheet that is specifically to me and gave me some instructions. Again, people aren't budgeting or forecasting on a daily basis, so we like to let them know some things that they need to work on. But everything I'm going to work with is over here on this main input tab. One of the things you see down the side is these different slicers and dicers of your data. Now these slicers and dicers are unique to your deployment and how you like to view your data, and they can change from business process to business process. So I have a slicer for department because we can, break it out. I've got a slicer here for location. I have a slicer for version because we support unlimited versioning of your budget. So you can start with version 1, copy to version 2, copy to version 99 if that's what you want to do. And I have a slicer for currency because you can do multi-currency budgeting within TrueSky. So if you have different operations in different jurisdictions, they can be budgeting in US dollars and you convert it to Canadian, you can be budgeting Canadian, convert it to US dollars, budgeting in euro, whatever the case may be. Now again, these slicers will be unique to your deployment. So if we're getting into the revenue world, your slicer might be salesperson, your slicer might be customer, your slicer might be product, okay? Well, I'm going to go ahead and retrieve data for the admin department for the Toronto location. And again, there's security around all of this that prevents different users from being able to interact with different pieces of information that you don't want them to work with. And now you see what pops up on the screen is my input form. Okay. Now, the thing I like to point out to this is all of the layouts, the color, the shading, what's on rows, what's on columns, the fonts, the colors, the formulas, all completely configurable by you. Okay, these are not hard-coded. These get to be whatever you want it to be. Okay, now I have chosen to budget for 3 months at a time and show 3 months of actuals and 3 months of variance. That's not how you have to do it. You could be budgeting for 12 periods at a time. You could be budgeting for 60 periods at a time if that's what you wanted to do. I am budgeting on a monthly basis right now, but you could be budgeting on a daily, weekly, quarterly, or yearly basis if that's what makes sense for you. We support things like 13 periods in a year, or doing things like a 4-5-4, 4-4-5, 5-4-4, whatever term you want to use, that traditional kind of retail calendar for doing budgeting as well. You can do certain entry on a calendar year and report it on a fiscal year. You can do entry on a fiscal year and report it on a calendar year. All of that is going to be configurable to you and your deployment. So in this example here, you see I'm pulling back a series of accounts, and again, security is invoked here. And as an end user, when I start working, I can simply come in here and type in the numbers that I want to work with. And I can do a copy paste, just like I can do in Excel. I can do that click and drag, just like I can do in Excel. And now when I do a formula, and you see this little formula here, this is an Excel formula. It's not an Excel-like formula. And the moment I hit save, my numbers are saved to the back-end database, and anyone else that has security to see these numbers will see them in real time without having to do any check-in and check-out of workbooks, no emailing things back and forth. All right? It is the fact that people can leverage all of this Excel knowledge and current learning is why end users will pick up TrueSky very, very quickly. And when you deploy a new forecasting solution to these users, you're not going to get a lot of pushback because it's a comfortable environment that they're already used to working within. Okay. Now we're not just the wild, wild west of Excel. So as an example, if I try to come over here on the actuals and change an actual, you're going to see I'm locked out from doing that. So again, we've disabled those kind of things that would break using Excel in a multi-user budgeting environment. However, if I'm the kind of person that likes to use my data bars, all of those are available for me online. So again, we've kept alive all of that Excel functionality that people want to use. Okay, let's talk about where we take it a little bit further than just traditional Excel. And again, all of these things I'm talking about will also apply when we get to revenue forecasting as well. First and foremost, complete audit trails. This is something that a lot of forecasting tools lack, whether it be in Excel, whether it be in your revenue forecasting tool in your ERP system, or some other outside system. And I'm talking on the budgeting and forecasting side because we obviously know ERP tools have audit trails when it comes to doing actual entries. But on the budget side, they tend not to. All right. So what you can see here is I've got a complete history of all the changes that have been made to this value over the course of time. And we tag it with the date and time they changed it, who was the user that changed it, and what was the business process in play that they made the change. And if I like a prior number better, I can highlight it and simply copy it back. This is what allows you to get away from any of that finger pointing that tends to happen during the budgeting cycle where people say, hey, those aren't my numbers. I didn't put those numbers in. Somebody else must have changed those. Again, you've got all of that here online. Other things that we do. We allow you, and we're big believers of this, is that when people are forecasting their numbers, having some insight into what they're thinking really gives you a greater understanding of the reality of their numbers and how truthful or these numbers might be. And maybe that's not the right way to phrase it, but it's really, how likely these numbers are to occur. In Excel and a lot of other applications, you might do kind of a right mouse click, add a comment, but the problem with it is over the course of time you lose all those comments. Well, we allow you to apply notes to your data. Again, this is allowing you to capture that qualitative portion of the number where people can explain their numbers. So if I wanted to add a number, I could say, why my number, why my number is so high. If I could type, which I can't, I could put it here. Again, if I'm doing revenue forecasting for a customer and their sales are going to drop, I'm able to put a note in that says, okay, their sales are probably going to drop with us because they're closing a location or because of the economy for this reason or the other. I can also add an electronic attachment. So if I've got a copy of a quote from a vendor in a PDF, if I've got an email from a customer, if I've got a business case in Word, I can attach that here, and these notes travel with the data. So when your people are going to review these notes, or when you're doing a budget to actual report 6 months from now, you'll have all this information in one place. You're not trying to scramble to try to figure out what people were thinking when they did their forecast. All right? Other things that we provide, a whole series of data tools that allow you to do rapid manipulation of the numbers, okay? So let's say here I had a number for how much we were going to spend over, the first 3 months. Now, instead of going cell by cell by cell and putting those numbers in, I could say, you know what? I think I'm going to spend $12,000. And I know I'm going to kind of allocate that evenly through each period. So again, instead of going cell by cell, I can come up here, open my data tools, type in 12,000. From this drop down, we've got a whole bunch of things here. I'm going to hit even. And now when I hit replace, you'll see that all of my numbers changed to automatically allocate that $12,000 evenly. And I could highlight a whole nother series of cells here and then hit replace. And you'll see that it took that $12,000 and did that equal allocation for me. But maybe there's some other things that I want to do. Maybe as an organization, we know we have some seasonality to our business. You're a ski resort or you are a summer camp, right? Where you're going to have highs of revenues and expenses in certain periods and lows in other periods. And this whole even division of your cost or your revenue just doesn't make sense, especially if you use this ultimately to do things like cash flow projection. Well, you can actually build those kind of rules into TrueSky. So I've set up one where the first period of every quarter is high. And now when I take that $12,000 and I hit replace, you'll see it allocated more to January and less to February and March. Or maybe you want to just base it on last year's flow. So if you see how my actuals go low, high, low, you'll see now when I do that, and I can base it on my actuals here and I hit replace. Now I took my 12,000 and allocated it on the same ratio of how my numbers happened last year. Other things that we can use this tool to do, and I'm just going to copy and paste some numbers here so I get some more cells here, is again additional increases or rapid decreases. So let's say I have some numbers in here and my boss tells me you've got to cut those by 23.5%. Well, in Excel I'd kind of have to go cell by cell by cell, which is a huge time waster. Well, here I could say 23.5 and choose percentage, and now each time I hit decrease, you'll see in my cells my numbers decrease by 23.5%. Or if I get the okay to go on a spending spree, I can put in a value here, and every time I hit increase, you'll see my cells increased by 1,000. Again, the goal of these tools is to get you better quality data into the system in a more rapid fashion. And there's a whole bunch of other ones that we've got that I won't go into now that you can leverage. All right. One other thing I'm going to show you, then I'll launch into some revenue stuff, is that ability to do rapid drill downs to core data. So in this example here, let's say I was wondering where this customer, how did this department spend $152,000 last year? Well, let's say I'm not somebody that has access to Dynamics GP, as an example. I would have to probably type up an email, send it out to the accounting department, who would have to stop what they're doing, go into Dynamics GP. Maybe they're going to run a report. Maybe they're going to do a smart list, as an example. Dump that data out, get it into Excel to me, email it back to me, and maybe it's got what I want, maybe it doesn't. But there's really two problems with that. There's a time lag, right? I'm having to wait on the accounting department to get me that information back. But it also adds to the workload of the finance group, who in most organizations are already overworked, right? So instead of doing that, why not give your users a direct drill back to that kind of data? So I've got one here that is going to allow me to do a real-time call, and this is expenses, and I'm pulling back all the AP and purchase order transactions that I have. But this could also be show me all the sales transactions, show me all the order entries, show me the inventory quantity. So this is making a real-time call back into the database of the ERP system and pulling back information for me. Now we've got security around this so people don't get into places that you don't want them to get into, and you can determine what columns that are appeared. And it's got some logic, so it's not returning like 10 years of data back at once, right? But here I can see all the account numbers, I can see the purchases, the tax amount, the total amount, you know, all these different columns that I have available to me to kind of look at as a user, to kind of do this drill down and this analysis of what's going on. I can start my numbers lowest to highest or highest to lowest. Or maybe I want to just see my top 10 purchases, right? And see what those top 10 purchases were that they had made during that period. And again, this could be show me my top 5 customers as an example. And maybe I'll clear that out. And maybe I want to see, okay, what was the total here for the period that was in, which I think was February. It was $50,000, all right? And I'm going to go ahead and clear that out as well. Again, there's a lot of different ways you can use this tool. But now I can kind of group it. Maybe I want to group it. I'm spending money by company cars, employee training, and so forth. Maybe I want to pull the vendor name in there. And now I can see here's my supply software account. Well, we spent money with Adobe, CamSoft Mobile Warehouse. Well, there was a tablet purchase that got booked to the wrong GL account, so it actually got booked to the wrong place. So what this is we're turning this from a budgeting and forecasting tool into an analytical tool that are allowing users to do their self-service drill downs to get at the data they need in real time on their own schedule and lifting that workload off of the finance group. And again, this doesn't have to be purchasing information. This could be data that is sales-related information, inventory-related information. You know, how many quantities did this customer buy? And again, this could be in a reporting mode or when you're doing budgeting. So again, it just helps you do better forecasting and more information at your fingertips. All right, so with that, I'm going to close out of the expense side. I'm going to show you some stuff on the revenue side specifically, but these features that I showed you, and there's about a dozen others that I haven't shown you, will apply equally to the revenue side of things. So right now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go into my annual budget cycle again, and I'm going to start with sales revenue. I'm going to kind of show you two kind of things. One is from a company that is product focused, another one is a company that is more professional services focused. And I'm going to open up a thing for sales revenue here. All right, so again, it's going out, it's retrieving a template specifically for me and starting to render it for what I need to see as an individual. Okay, so a lot of different ways you can do revenue forecasting in TrueSky. And again, it all gets tailored to your organization and what you need to do. Maybe you want to do it just simply by customer, putting a dollar amount in and just tagging it by customer. That is supported. Maybe you want to do it by product. Okay, and you want to do it by product and by quantities. Or maybe you want to do it by customer by product. That is supported as well. Or maybe by salesperson. Again, tailor it to what you need and what's going to drive your business forward. I'm going to focus here on doing it by product in this example, okay? So, first thing I want to show you is we have the ability to do these different filters. And again, grouping things by product group. So maybe your whole product list as a company is a couple thousand items deep, all right? Putting all of that up on one screen when somebody tries to go and do budgeting and forecasting, that's a lot of data. And for, you know, studies have shown that these users are going to have information overload, and you're actually causing them to spend more time doing the budget by giving them too much data at once, because by the time you get halfway down, you've forgotten what you did up below, and you spend a lot of time scrolling up and down, and it's just too much for your head to get around. So in this example here, instead of pulling back all of my products, I have the ability to pull them down based by product groups. So now these could be some of the categories that you have in, say, Dynamics GP that are tied to your products for your inventory items. So again, think of your user-defined fields or your class IDs, I think is the term I'm looking for there, that pull these back. Those could be kind of these filters. So instead of pulling back all of the bikes, we're a bike distributor company here, I'm only going to pull back road bikes here. All right, so now what I'm going to do is retrieving just for road bikes. And again, it's going out and only going to pull back road bikes for me. And again, security is around this. So if there are certain products that an individual shouldn't see, certain customers that they shouldn't see, again, this is going to filter it out here. So now what you're seeing here is I have the ability to see my list of not just SKUs, but also metadata, more information. So I could put the SKU, the product name, the class, any of the other information that we have tied to the products, I could put here. All right, I'm doing here, putting in the quantities, how much I'm selling, right? And you'll see over here, it's automatically pulling in the unit price. Now, this is the budgeted unit price. Now, you could have set this up such that the individual is allowed to edit both the quantity that they're going to put in and the unit price, or maybe you want to have control that we're going to centrally manage the unit price, but we're going to roll this out to the salespeople to forecast the quantities that they think they are going to sell. So again, you've got a lot of flexibility in that. You could also have columns for things like discounts. So we're going to discount, we expect our average discount to be 8% or to be $3 per unit or whatever the case may be. And as you can see, as I'm putting numbers into the system here, it's automatically calculating my total sales amount. When I hit save, it is saving both the quantities and the unit price and the sales amount. And then what will happen is these sales revenue figures will ultimately populate my financial budget, one or more different revenue accounts depending on how your mappings work with, products tying back to revenue accounts. So you can kind of do a P&L at that point. Now, one of the questions I get, I'm only showing, quantities. If you wanted to show last year's quantities that were sold, absolutely, you can put those on these screens. Again, free form for how you want to design it. All right, and I'll show you, you can even do things like, I'll just show you a couple quick examples here. Let's say we just wanted to do a customer, right? Here's an example. I don't want to pull back my whole list of customers. I just want to, limit them by, say, province or state here as an example. So here it's only going to bring back customers that are in British Columbia. So now when I hit retrieve, right, you'll see it's going to limit those for this. And this one's very dollar-based. Again, I'm showing, okay, is this a wholesale versus a retail customer? What's their customer ID? What's their name? And again, I can put in numbers here at a dollar levels. And again, these would map back up to your specific revenue accounts. All right. So those are two very kind of basis. And again, you can do by customer, by product, whatever the case may be here. Let me show you that one, I think, really quick, just so you get a full breadth of what we do. Then I'll show you something if you're more of a professional services. So here's an example where you can select a customer and a product group. And then again, you can do things by salesperson if that's what you needed to do as well. So now let's switch over and show you if you're somebody that is more of a professional services type firm, okay? Because we support that kind of concept for revenue forecasting as well. So it just doesn't have to be if you're selling widgets, you can be selling hours or selling bodies, as the case may be. So right here, you've got a couple different things that you can do, and this is design for products. So the first thing you would want to do is put in kind of like task rates, and we could support even doing things like task rates by client, or they could be global or whatever. So I'm going to select a client, and I'm going to go with Golden Leaf Garden Management. And now you can see the different projects that I have available here. We're doing an email server upgrade or a file share server migration. The thing I'd like to also point out is that if I choose a different customer here, the list of products or projects that they have available automatically changes and dynamically adjusts. And again, we can feed that from your different systems. So if you're using, like in Dynamics GP, their project accounting or the Wensoft job costing module, those can be sources for these data. So I can budget by customers, by their projects, or whatever the case may be. But we've got these logical associations, so you're not budgeting it to two components that shouldn't be going hand in hand. So I'm going to pull back for garden leaf management. I'm going to do my email server upgrade. And this is where I can set different task rates. Again, this could also be by individual consultant for the revenue side. It could be just by the project as a whole. It could be global, you know, if you don't change it by customer or project or what have you. And I may have lost connection here. Hang on a second while I just check something. Alright, so my connection dropped here, so I'm just reconnecting here really quick. That is one of the nice things about TrueSky, because everything that we do is database-based, that if for some reason people lose connection in the middle of the process, you don't have anything that's corrupted, nothing hung up, we just go back out to the database and re-pull things back in, okay? So again, it's designed for that environment where people may not always have perfect connections or perfect IT infrastructure and so forth. So now I'm going to retrieve here again. All right, so there we go. So task rates, right? So I'm putting in what are my rates for different tasks here and everything else, right? And again, this could be one rate for everything across the board. Again, all depends on you and your business model. But once you get things like task rates in, then you can actually do your revenue projections. And again, this could be by customer where you're putting in, you know, what you think your hours are going to be and so forth. So I'm going to do that as well, pull back the same kind of project here. And now you get the ability to see, you know, put in hours. So right here I'm saying how many hours we're going to spend for each of these. And again, if you look down below, it's automatically calculating the revenue that you're generating based on the hours that I put in that other worksheet. So again, these processes can be controlled by different people throughout the system. And I can go ahead and save. And now I know what our projected hours are completely and what our revenue is going to be out of this project. And we give you the ability to reforecast, by the way, if you need to do that midway through the year or whatever. But at the end of the day, you're going to be able to pull up, you know, by client or all of your clients if you wanted to do that, and do a summary of, you know, what you're going to get revenue from them. And again, this could feed different GL lines for the revenue accounts at a general ledger level, so you can see where you're going to end up completely. So again, that's different ways of doing revenue forecasting. So again, you're going to get to define it based on your data and your business process within TrueSky. So I'm going to show you one last wrap-up slide, and then I'm going to bring Kathleen back on to do a wrap-up, and we will open it up for any questions. I don't know if she mentioned it at the start, but if you start to have questions, there's a little question pane within the GoToWebinar interface, and you can start typing any questions that you have in there right now. So let me just open this up, and we'll do. So at the end of the day, what are the benefits that you will get from deploying TrueSky in your organization? Well, first is a dramatic reduction in the amount of time it takes to do your budgeting and forecasting process. In fact, cutting it in half by 50% or more. So if you're an organization that is trying to get to doing quarterly reforecasts or that holy grail of monthly rolling forecast, we can help make that happen. You're going to have a system that the finance group can maintain, where you're going to be able to maintain and set security, build your own input sheets that are used for assignments and reports, maintain all of that yourself without having to have heavy reliance on your IT group. Because of a lot of tools and the controls that we have, you're going to get greater accuracy, you're going to get better numbers out of the system, and at the end of the day, you're going to get useful information that you can use to make business decisions on. So with that,